Hi, everybody. We're just going to give a few more minutes before we start. And by a few, I mean one. So bear with me for just a little bit longer. Thank you all for joining us. All right, everyone, for the sake of time and keeping all of us on schedule today, I would like to thank you all for joining us for our second webinar Wednesday, Autism at Work, a Refresher. I'd like to very quickly, just one housekeeping item, let everyone know that we have some time at the end built in for questions. We'd like to ask you to use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen for all submissions. Our very capable team, Arnaldo and Justin, will be fielding the questions and saving them for later. My name is Leanne Rexford, for those of you I know. Hello. And for those of you who don't know me, I am the Director of Partner Relations for the Able Trust. And for the new partners of ours, I would like to just let you know the Able Trust was created by the Florida Legislature in 1990 as a direct support organization for vocational rehabilitation. Since our establishment, our work has focused on increasing opportunities for Floridians with disabilities to join the workforce. Looking forward to the next 30 years and beyond, the Able Trust is repositioning our work on disability employment by being the thought leader for workforce disability inclusion. Our plan consists of three major strategic priorities: research, outreach, and capacity building. As the thought leader, we share data, not just economic data, but evidence-based research and best practices. This better equips us to meet stakeholders where they're at, and in turn, raise awareness, make connections, and build collaborations between employers, educators, career service providers, elected officials, community leaders, and more. It really does take a village. Research shows about 1 out of every 4 individuals in the world has at least one disability. All individuals will likely experience living with a disability at some point throughout their life, be it temporary, like a broken arm, situational, like being unable to understand the presenter on a webinar, or permanent, like autism. Also, more than 70% of disabilities are invisible. Learning disabilities, health conditions, depressions, there are many disabilities that we cannot see and cannot presume to understand. Keeping that statistic in mind, the Able Trust is a disability neutral organization. Our support of disability inclusion in the workplace extends to all levels, from entry-level positions all the way up to the C-suite. The folks that you're seeing on your screen include a nonprofit executive, a hospital therapy assistant, an ICU nurse that won Rookie of the Year her first year. There's a journalist in there, an ice cream shop owner, a fitness trainer. Our population, the folks that we support, are capable of whatever they dream of. In fact, I myself have an invisible disability. I am a proud type 1 diabetic and have been since I was 6 years old. To help manage my day-to-day, I have a certified diabetic alert dog. Her name is Willow. Hopefully you won't hear her in the background, but if you do, she's just saying hello, I'm sure. I would also like to publicly acknowledge that without my local VR counselor, Ketsia, I would not have Willow. I'm the first VR consumer in the state of Florida to receive a diabetic alert dog, and I'm so grateful that she went to bat for me. She really had to, because being the first at anything, especially in a system like vocational rehab, and talking about the amount of money that we were talking about, it really took her fighting for me. So I want to take this opportunity to really thank her and all of our VR counselors that work so hard every single day. What you do really does change lives. Moving on, sorry, little sidebar. Arnaldo didn't know I was going to say all that, but moving on, I do have some good news. The number of Floridians with a disability who are employed continues to increase every single year. From 2017 to 2021, that increase was nearly 20%. You may also have read recently about businesses targeting hidden talent as they try to reach their hiring goals. And persons with disabilities are one of the key groups on which they are focusing their searching. We are already seeing an increase in the employment of persons with disabilities as businesses and industry leaders look to them to help with their workforce shortages. Continuing that momentum is crucial, and we happen to be in the perfect time of year to increase awareness of disability employment issues. As you know, October is Disability Employment Awareness Month, and the Able Trust works year-round on promoting disability employment, but this important time of year in October gives us a unique opportunity to work with partners around the state to really shine a light on the contributions Floridians with disabilities make to the workforce. Our theme for DEAM this year is fueling workplace ambition, because everyone has something that fuels them. And for me personally, it's coffee. This is water, but it was coffee earlier. And everyone has something. And we like to, again, shine a light on it and hear from you all. Of course, we would be remiss if we did not thank our outstanding slate of DEAM sponsors. Webinar Wednesday is a big part of how we celebrate DEAM, and we couldn't do it without each and every one of them. And an especially big thank you, all caps, to Miss Michelle Landry of NextEra Energy. Michelle serves as a Senior Director of Engagement, Diversity, and Inclusion at NextEra Energy. She leads employment engagement, diversity, equity, and inclusion, as well as equal employment opportunity compliance efforts. Michelle facilitates 12 employee resource groups, the Corporate Diversity Council, the Executive Diversity Council, and the Corporate Racial Equity team that reports to the C-suite. And as if that's not impressive enough, there's more. Michelle sits on the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee of the United Way of Palm Beach County. Her passion for people has guided her professional career, and she prides herself on investing time in her role as mentor to many. Michelle was honored at the South Florida Business and Wealth 2022 Diversity and Inclusion Awards for her leadership to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts at NextEra Energy. Please welcome our friend, Miss Michelle Landry.
Thank you so much, Leanne. Thank you for sharing your story. And hello to everyone out there. I want to thank each of you for taking time out of your schedule to join us today, and for your actions to both recognize National Disability Employment Awareness Month and to enhance the potential for individuals of diverse abilities to contribute to our workforce and our society. At NextEra Energy, the parent company for Florida Power and Light, we believe that we have the best team in the industry. We value our people and we want them to thrive. And that is why we have created a diverse and inclusive work environment where employees can be proud of where they work and what they do. Our employees share their distinctive abilities and attributes with our team. We have three corporate values that have helped us to build our people centric culture, and they are embedded in everything we do. We're committed to excellence, we do the right thing, and we treat people with respect. When talented employees from varied backgrounds are engaged and contributing to our business success, we all benefit. The diversity of thought and experience offered by an employee base that reflects the communities that we serve gives us a competitive advantage internationally, nationally, and directly within the communities in which we live, work, and raise our families. Our 14 employee resource groups, or ERGs, are at the heart of our D&I and engagement efforts. These voluntary, employee led groups are made up of employees and allies who partner together to develop personal and professional skills, drive cultural competency, and demonstrate advocacy. ERGs are organized around gender, generations, ethnicity, veteran status, disability status, sexual orientation, professional interests, and faith. The ERGs play a key role in helping to evolve and grow our inclusive culture. ERGs host a variety of events throughout the year. And for Disability Employment Awareness Month, the Alliance for People with Disabilities ERG is hosting a number of events to support our employees and their families with relevant content and resources. Our employees support many nonprofits and local community programs, including the Able Trust and other disability supporting organizations, as part of our commitment to contribute to our communities. Through our Power to Care volunteer program, our employees and their families volunteer thousands of hours each year to make a difference. In 2022, NextEra Energy employees contributed more than 46,000 hours to their local communities through company-sponsored projects and personal volunteer time. NextEra Energy and our employees also contributed more than $25 million last year to support wide-ranging initiatives and causes that benefit the well-being of our communities. And NextEra Energy recognizes the significant value that small and diverse companies offer our company and our customers. Our supplier diversity program is designed to drive participation and grow the number and scale of diverse suppliers at NextEra Energy. And our small and diverse suppliers provide innovation and quality to our company while contributing to the economic strength of our local and underrepresented communities where we work, live, and serve. In 2022, we spent approximately $15 million with service disabled veteran owned businesses. Through our supplier diversity program, we support economic growth and contribute to a more sustainable future for our customers, our communities, and our company. And it is now my pleasure to introduce today's speaker. Shelton Gilyard is a fourth-year PhD student at the University of South Florida School of Social Work. He was selected into the American Psychological Association Interdisciplinary Minority Fellowship Program, or IMFP, 2022 through 2024 cohort. The IMFP works towards reducing health disparities among ethnic minorities in the United States. Shelton's research interest involves health disparities, early identification of autism spectrum disorder, ASD, global access to mental health services, and research that promotes athlete well-being in the field of sports social work. Mr. Gilyard has worked on behalf of individuals with disabilities for nearly 25 years as a clinician and funder. He has dedicated his career to facilitating opportunities for success for individuals of all abilities. Thank you, Shelton, so much for taking the time to share your expertise And I will now turn it back over to Leanne and Shelton for the remainder of the presentation.
Thank you so much, Michelle. It is so great to have someone like you leading the charge. Honestly, you are such a force. Thank you. And we have Shelton. If you could get your camera up for me so I can see your face. There you are. Hello. All right. So everyone, this is what you've all been waiting for. There was a 17-minute introduction because Michelle and I have a lot to say. We're not going to apologize. But Shelton is who you all came here to listen to. So I'm going to dive right in with the first question. Shelton, we just heard from Michelle in your bio that you've been working with individuals with disabilities for 25 years. Take us back to how you got started. What makes you an expert? Where does your passion come from?
Okay. Thank you, Leanne. Thank you for that introduction. I began working in pediatrics at the University of South Florida, really doing developmental evaluations for kids at risk. And so a lot of them were identified at risk for autism. And my interest and passion really became really lit behind really not understanding what happened to those families once they left the program. They would get the diagnosis, and really, I would not know if they were well, if they did well, transitioned into school, what would happen to them. And so my curiosity just was sparked at that point. And so early in my career, that curiosity bug, I just could not get rid of it. And so as my career progressed and I continued with graduate studies, I then took a role, a direct service role at the Center for Autism and Related Disabilities, where I had the opportunity to really do more direct service, really test the research, understand the research around serving individuals impacted by ASD, kind of come up with some of my own theories about what works, what doesn't work, how to interact with diverse families, assist our program in really meeting the complex needs across different geographic areas. And then finally, most recently, I worked with a local funding entity that a portion of their mission and focus is to meet the needs of individuals with disabilities, and really had an opportunity to look at providing services at a systems level. So what are those system level things that get in the way of connecting families to practice? And so I've had the unique opportunity to follow. I've served a lot of families of diverse background, particularly 5 in particular, where I think really they probably taught me far more than I've taught them, but they're now adults. And so we've walked the walk, so to speak, together, each of them with different skill sets, different challenges that we've overcome over the years. And so it's really developed a more global perspective of what those needs look like. In social work, we call them micro, macro, and meso level practice. And so that type of perspective is really what I bring to the field. That's awesome. Thank you so much.
We met recently, so we haven't had a lot of time to get to know one another, but that is a really awesome passion story. And anyone that's met me more than once, I ask everyone that works in this field, what drives you? Because it's very hard to work in the social sector if you're not passionate and if it doesn't come from somewhere down deep. So thank you for sharing that. I really do appreciate it. Now we know you're pursuing your PhD. Congratulations. You're in your 4th year, which is awesome. What is your plan afterwards? How are you going to share your talents, your skills, and all you've learned from your 25 years of history experience? How are you going to share that with the Tampa Bay area?
Well, my interest area is around, meeting the needs of individuals with disabilities. As I said, that bug is still there. It's really what has driven me. My dissertation is around early identification of ASD for minority populations, particularly African-American parents and primary caregivers, with the long-term plan of developing a piece of AI that have some experience in that will help that process, as well as potentially be integrated into some of the other service systems, but really give parents and caregivers evidence access, increased access to evidence-based information, so that they can then be able to better advocate on behalf of their children at that early stage. We're really talking about before they get the diagnosis, and so such that that's facilitated at a more timely process, such that when they reach this transition period that we're talking about now, they really have had an opportunity to learn all of the skill set, and they really have the prerequisite skills to be successful on the backside. I mentioned early just about the 5 students particularly, and those are things we talked about early on in my work with them. But my long-term goal is to I'd like to do some foundation work potentially that's really focused around serving and meeting the needs of diverse communities, and then being a former athlete myself, athlete well-being, anything that has to deal with athlete well-being, mental health of athletes is something of interest. So really community-based research that are, really dedicated to those research areas.
Awesome. All right. So as you know, the audience today is primarily, there's a lot of employment service providers. We have a lot of folks that are very new to working with folks on the spectrum. We have, as everyone in the audience knows, we asked you a couple questions when you registered. And one of those questions was, how long have you been working with folks on the spectrum? And we have people that have been working with folks for over 25 years. And then we have folks that are like, I'm interning, it's been 3 months, or I'm a student and I haven't really gotten the exposure. So we have a pretty broad audience, which I think is amazing. But we do have a lot of folks that do know the ins and outs and why we call it a spectrum, right? Can you offer some insight to folks who are looking to tap into their clients' unique talents? So for folks that are working with individuals with autism, what insights or advice can you give them?
I think first off, this topic that we're talking about in terms of employment. So competitive integrated employment is a critical component for transition into adulthood. Kids on the spectrum have had these transition points. It happens from early childhood into adolescence, and so these major transition periods are unique and challenging. But this one is another big one, a big, huge milestone in my experience. So really understanding that these transition periods are really, really challenging for everybody involved. Obviously, as a service provider as well, I feel like I'm preaching to the choir with that piece. But coming from that understanding, I think is very, very important. Employers, by and large, even with all the awareness that's going on, folks still really don't understand the complexities of the diagnosis, and that primarily because individuals on the spectrum don't present as a disabled in the common sense, and so that's still something that's at play. And so we'll talk a little bit more about specific strategies, but understanding the diagnosis and the complexities, really understanding how, when you're working with employers, to create an understanding of the benefits of employing individuals, particularly those on the spectrum. What are their strengths, and how those strengths can impact a company's bottom line, for example. How resources and supports can be integrated into what they do. And it really does highlight what a company might do, how it aligns with their mission and focus. Really being able to do that when you're beginning to have some of those introductory conversations. But then after that, how do you match so there's a fit with the individual, with the employee and the employer. So make sure that that fits there, but then also that those supports in place. I pulled some literature, and so in the literature, it says that 14% of autistic individuals work in their local communities. So and a large portion, when they are appropriately matched, they stay there. So companies have to be, any company really has to be concerned with staff turnover.
Yeah.
Those things equate to dollars, and so being able to articulate that to a company is very, very important. When the supports are in place, the literature says by and large greater job satisfaction, tenured employment, so they're there for the long haul. Again, I'm preaching to the choir with regards to the strengths of individuals on the spectrum in terms of when they get it, they understand the routine. It's actually difficult to break, so you don't have the errors and things that might happen with other individuals, and so understanding and being able to articulate those strengths.
Right. With less consistent individuals.
Correct. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. And just for my own curiosity, when you say when those supports are in place, can you give us an example of what you mean when you say that?
So one of the examples is, and these are strategies that I'm sure our audience have heard of, visual supports. That could be a schedule, a synthesis of what are the steps involved in a particular task. Those things might be accommodations that are needed for a kid to be, or an individual to be successful in a particular job or to acquire a new task. So maybe they're there and we're beyond that introductory stage, but having these visual supports to minimize the communication barriers that sometimes exist for individuals impacted by ASD. And sometimes employers might need help understanding the benefit of that, and that that extra work, again, allows us to tap into an individual who's going to better understand what the expectations are and be able to master the task with greater proficiency and less likelihood for error.
Yes, perfect. Thank you for that example. I really appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so all individuals with autism are different. I think everyone on this call, whether you've been working in the social sector for 5 minutes or 50 years, we all understand that. But many require similar accommodation strategies, techniques to reach their full potential in the workplace. And I asked this question specifically because we as the Able Trust, we are interested in folks with disabilities reaching their full potential. That is very important to all of us. So what strategies do you have to offer for us so all of the clients that our group works with can reach their full potential?
Great question, Leanne. One that I really like and I've used is video model. I don't know if some of our audience members have used it, have heard of it. There's a lot of literature that talks about the benefits, the evidence-based, the strength of integrating video modeling for individuals with ASD. One, a lot of our individuals have a propensity already for technology. So in the technology age that we're in, it aligns with that thought process. It allows us to give the individual support in a non-threatening manner that also preserves their dignity and respect. Video modeling involves taking short video clips and synthesizing them, organizing them in a way that articulates what's expected of the individual with ASD in a visual format. Now technology exists where we can put clips on a phone. We used to, before technology was what it was, and what it is now. And, we have iPhones and tablets and devices that could seamlessly be whipped out. An individual could access, here's the new product line, and here are the sequence steps that need to be followed in order to complete that task. So video modeling, there's a lot of research, and I can then send a couple of links and resources where folks can access how to do that in an effective way. We can also come back and do specific training specifically on how to do that, what works, what doesn't work.
That's awesome.
But it is a great tool that could be easily adapted. Employers get it, so you can teach and train the employers as well on the benefits and how it's used. But video modeling is something that's really, really strong in the literature. I've used it, and it's, by and large, something that's always yields some benefit. Doesn't solve all the problems, but by and large, definitely facilitates successful outcome. Another way that it's very effective, we know that sometimes we can set up positive work environments, work situations for individuals on the spectrum, but sometimes it doesn't go well. There's these social snafus that happen, unfortunately, and the challenge sometimes is that in the moment decision making is a challenge or is a barrier for the employee. And so what to do in that moment? Video modeling is also an easy way when an individual gets tripped up or is at that crossroad of making a decision. Now they have a go-to tool that can be put right in their pockets. Right. Tips is an example. Some employers don't allow employees to take tips, but we know folks are kind-hearted and they can be forceful. No, I want you to have this tip. Yes. You helped me out. You bagged my groceries, or you delivered my product to me timely. I want to give you this financial incentive, but it is clearly against policy. And sometimes our individuals get crossed up, but video modeling facilitates a way that we can resolve and remedy some of those, social challenges and in the moment decision making things that come up.
In the literature and the tools that you already have available, are there templates already created for some of these situational?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome. Yes.
Our
Please share that with us.
Yeah. So there's a couple of different sites. We have a center here at the University of South Florida that has some great resources kind of ready made for a lot of these scenarios. And folks can access them. They're free, low cost or no cost. Most of them are no cost. So it's just a matter of going on there and accessing that information.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Okay, so moving right along, because I want to make sure we leave time for questions at the end. When you and I first spoke I don't know when that was, it feels like a couple of months ago, I told you that my objective for this webinar was for our audience to walk away better equipped to work and support with their clients with autism. What have you learned through your career, your 25 years plus your 4 years as a PhD student so far, that could better equip our folks that work directly with clients with autism? What advice do you have? What tricks of the trade do you have besides, the video, those videos? But any last minute advice you can give?
I would there's no substitute for good planning. When you can step back, and obviously I know folks are presented with a lot of information at this juncture of transitioning into employment. So there's a lot of information behind that. As I said, I work with, at least 5 students that we had a chronology of all the steps and things like that. So a lot of those strategies that we use early on are still applicable at this transition point. Some of them have fallen off because we no longer need them to learn how to ride the bus to get to work. We've mastered that. So we've taken some of those strategies and things that we've put in place, and we've now pulled those things away. So your social scripts and things of that nature, we pull those things away. But now we need to go back and see if they're usable now, how to make them age appropriate. Sometimes the resistance comes from the lack of age appropriateness, but also going back and asking some of the other team members, the teachers, the therapists, and gathering what those strengths and weaknesses look like current day. Because oftentimes you're looking at information that may not give the real-time interest area of an individual on the spectrum. And I'll give the quick example. I have one of the boys that that I work with really since he was about 2.5. He always had an interest for music. He could play about 5 or 6 instruments, and but still had these social woes. And when we tried employment, it didn't work. Some of the social things really were anxiety provoking and really kind of facilitated him shutting down. What we ended up finding was that we created an opportunity, and I'll share one of the places we tried employment was at our local Strat Center, which is our local performing arts center. And he was doing ticketing and some other things like that, but some of the issues kind of got in the way of that. But he was really interested in the music production part. Long story short, we found a scenario where he can now teach drumming and piano. He's a brilliant musician, but he's earning income, gainful income by teaching piano and lessons. I mean, he just is wired that way for it. And his infectious personality is able to come out. So we had to be creative about creating more of an entrepreneurial type of platform for him to be successful and gain gainful income. That's really just being outside of the box in terms of doing that information gathering.
Individualized his plan for employment.
Correct.
Love that. All right. So I think I have time for one more of our planned questions.
Yeah.
What are the best ways to facilitate effective communication strategies between the employer and the employee who is on the spectrum? Because at the end of the day, most of our audience members the goal is employment. That's what we care about. So you talk a lot about the social, the social stressors that create a barrier to their long-term employment. So what are some of the communication strategies we can try to enact?
I think on the front end, asking the employer, what if I could bring you an employee that could lower your staff turnover rates, as we were talking about earlier? What if I could would potentially 6 months of funding for on-the-job training for a new employee, what would that mean for your bottom line or for your company? Would that be something of interest? So packaging a dialogue with employers about, as we were talking about earlier, that cost benefit to them by hiring and supporting. Because we want it to be long-term, we want it to be successful, but hiring and supporting the success of individuals on the spectrum and other disabilities as well. But facilitating that dialogue, as well as helping them understand that when folks are properly matched, there's a fit, that there's a strong likelihood that they're going to stay there and remain a part of that team for the long haul. And so as well as setting up, allowing job coaches to attend even the initial interview, for example. Sometimes, they get the green light for an interview, and that may not be facilitated, but it's a great just fundamental strategy, and then even bringing some of these strategies that I'm talking about to that stage of the employment placement are just critical first steps.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mhm.
And then what are some of the questions that you use when working with individuals to draw out their needs and their strengths? What are some of the specific questions that you need to answer to help draw out what they might need in the workplace?
I think your question was, what are they to draw out what they need?
Yeah, to help draw out what their needs are
Yeah.
when they are getting into the workplace, if it's their first.
Mm-hmm. So I typically ask, I always, with our business folks, I cater towards what their interests are. And like I said, as I've already mentioned about just creating that environment of here's how it's going to benefit you. How do we make this successful? Like what, who's your longest? I ask about tenured employees. I ask about turnover rates. I ask about job satisfaction. What do people say about, do they like their job? What are their long-term goals? And then, in terms of pulling out the skill sets, what would I ask them, what would you need to understand how this individual can be successful in this particular job task? And then do you have a natural stepwise progression for them to be successful? Are you open to training? Are other questions that I ask, training and support. And assessments, like are they open of, if they're open to that type of collaborative collaboration around assessments and how to use that information. Those are some of the initial questions that I might ask and share with them, as well as the resources.
Awesome. All right. Let me take a look because we're at 11:44. Let me take a look at our Q&A really quickly. So Daily White is asking, could you speak a bit about best practices during hiring and recruitment for this population?
Best practice. I spoke of the one
she wrote this 20 minutes ago, so you may have already. She may be right.
What I'm really big on and what I'm really encouraging folks, because we're at an information transition point, I think this is just my opinion. Accessing mobile health technology, there's just so many tools that we can use to support employment in the immediate and in the long term. I just encourage, if you've never used video modeling, technology-based interventions, I encourage you to take a look. Couple of, like I said, there's a lot of training. If you go to one of the resources that I listed was Launch USF, which is, it was previously the Learning Academy. And they have a lot of easily accessible, kind of in a lay language for anybody at any level in this field to access and understand how to use, for example, video modeling. But it is a strong strategy that can help certainly navigate employment, but other scenarios that might be challenges for individuals on the spectrum as well.
Perfect. Darren dropped a couple compliments. Thank you very much, Darren. And then Holly Condra is asking, how can we support our students in 11th and 12th grade to prepare them for the transition to the workforce? That is the $1 million question, isn't it, Holly? Yeah.
The short answer is start as early in that 11th grade year, probing what skills would be needed because with at least two of the individuals that I told you that I spoke with, we started like the tail end of that 10th grade year. We really kind of understood where some of the deficit areas were. We had some inclination that at least one of them was interested in a technology-based career, doing some programming. We looked at local resources and began to kind of match some of those things, funding and some of those interest areas. But we started as soon as possible in that 10th to 11th grade year, beginning to look at the documentation of the skill sets, the academic progress, but then some of those daily living skills that oftentimes are the first steps, and what do we need to do to master those skills.
Got it. Okay. And then Rose Lee Archer. If a person with autism has worked for over a decade at a retail store and graduated with a degree in communication and has tried to get in their career. Okay. So not much. So Rose, you're asking what advice does Shelton have for the adult population, someone with an advanced degree that's been working, but is this someone who needs to find another job, or read the second part? Sorry. All right. Do you identify with employers your disability? Oh, do you disclose? Or do you avoid the situation and hope that they give them an opportunity? Thanks, Rose. So she's asking about disclosure when someone is either already working or getting a job. How do you navigate that? Or what's your advice?
So we're asking, do we disclose that information to the employer on the front end?
The disability.
Yeah. I'm of the mindset of disclosure, because I think when we can have an honest conversation about what me as a potential employee bring to the table and how we can, engage in this relationship, I think it works better. There's no surprises. I mean, that doesn't work in typical situations where disability isn't a factor. Fully disclosing, I think, gives the individual the opportunity to be successful. Not that any benchmarks need to be lowered, but the clarity and the expectations and any supports can be put in place. And then there's latitude when things don't work out. Because if you let things build and the employer doesn't have the background knowledge, doesn't have the tolerance,
the whole situation can be made worse.
Right. Bad training, for example, is another,
right. And you said this earlier. You said that, as a group, not that we're stereotyping because everyone's very different, but as a population, once something is learned, it's very difficult to unlearn the way to do something. So without that information, an employer may not dedicate as much time to the training. However, I do have just a bit of pushback. When someone's applying online and there's that button, that disclosure button, I am also as a member of the disability community, I've always been very hesitant to click that button on online applications, because I'm like, well, they're going to see that check and they're going to put that right in the round filing bin. So that's me personally. That is just me personally, a fear that I've had for my entire career. I know that when I applied for the Able Trust job, they put at the bottom of the application, people with disabilities are welcome to apply. And I loved that. But I've never seen it again. So do you have any feedback for those who are like me that are just very hesitant on clicking that button?
When you have like what you described, where an employer that is already welcoming of diverse populations, diverse applicants, it makes it easy.
For sure.
It makes it a little bit easier decision. I think every scenario is unique. I just, and I don't know that we can fully control some of those biases and things that might happen behind the decision making of whether to hire an employee or not. I think we'd have to use our own discretion in that scenario. I just think that if disclosure has happened and you've gotten an interview and you kind of at that stage, it increases the likelihood. I have a quick example of when it didn't go well, and if information was clear, maybe the employer had an opportunity to just give it some forethought about, and I call it the pessimistic trainer. There's a scenario where we had assisted an individual getting placed. They were placed. It was a good fit. You know, all of the planning that we write down and carve out is there, but the employer had the employee trained by probably the most pessimistic person in the company. So this person, while training the individual, not knowing that it's so hard to unteach some of those some of those things that have been taught.
Imagine.
Long story short, this person's dissatisfaction with their job, ways in which corners could be cut, policies and things like that they didn't like, all of these things were poured into this individual, and they came out every day,
Of course.
you know, and in practice. And so it created a scenario where we couldn't be successful because that's how he was trained. And so if the employer had given some forethought about just matching this individual with somebody who they have confidence in,
Right.
in training and
Could have all been avoided.
it could have been avoided. But
Well,
long story short.
way to leave it on a positive note. So we have about 6 minutes left. So I want to just take this time to say thank you to Shelton. And once you share the information, I have everyone on this call. I have all of your email addresses. So I'll go ahead and share the resources that Shelton has mentioned, like the launch program. So please stay tuned for that. And then last but not least, for anyone who is responsible on their team for job development or building relationships with employers, the Able Trust is hosting an event on October 30th and 31st. It's a relationship building job development workshop, 2 days. It is at USF, and it is free. So all you need to do is register and attend, and you'll be able to you'll walk away with a lot more information on how to secure those employment opportunities. And there will be some ongoing training available coming from the Able Trust. So if you have questions about that, you have my contact information. So please reach out. And with that, I will give you all about 5 minutes back. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Shelton. I really appreciate you being here.
You're welcome. Thanks for the invitation. I appreciate it.
Of course. Of course. All right. Thanks, everybody. Goodbye.
Bye.